This happened about 20 years ago. I was 9 years old at the time. My parents are both biologists. They met at work, and from there it's history. The place where they worked at the time was a government building dedicated to biology research used in government projects turned towards the public, meaning they were the ones studying the environment and making environmental protection laws around their studies. This being a massive old government building, it always had a security guard present day and night. During the day, these security guards would mostly just stay at the reception and greet people, but at night, they would go do their rounds and make sure there were no intruders because of all the science equipment and computers kept in the building. One of these guards is the let's not meet guy. Initially, he seemed like the nicest person. He was really nice to me, and frankly, all the memories I have from him before this were really nice. He would greet me and talk to me in the nicest way every time my parents brought me to work. He would make me throw paper planes, which he was surprisingly good at, and throw them around with me, and he would stay with me at reception in the days my parents had to work into the night. Obviously for me, that would get really boring really fast, so he'd keep me company and entertain me. Mostly we would talk, play with the paper planes, and watch TV. It all seemed nice enough. Nice enough for my parents to trust them with me, which was probably their biggest mistake. One night, my parents had to work even later than usual. I think it was around 10 p.m., and they were still at it. So this guy, who was on the night shift, decided to take me around the building with them to do his rounds. We started on the top floor, checking all the rooms and the exterior part of the roof. Every room was so dark that I'd always have to stay a little behind and wait for him to turn on the lights. Then we stepped out to the second floor, where my parents' office and labs were. We checked the opposite side of the building, going into labs with massive extractors, microscopes, and every kind of science equipment you might think of. We walked down the stairs to the first floor, where most of the administration rooms were. I still remember seeing some maps on the walls and embalmed fish everywhere serving as decorations. First floor was all clear, so it was time to check the two basement levels. I thought it would have made sense to check the labs on the right side first, as the left side had a flight of stairs at the end, leading up to where my parents were. But for some reason, he decided we check that side first. We checked all the labs, but I noticed his pace was accelerating, and he was starting to look and sound happier, excited even. Once again, we checked all the labs, all the corners from one end to the other, turning the lights on ahead of us and turning them off behind us when we left. When we got to the last area, he turned all the lights on and we went inside. There were 3 separate offices on each side of the lab, and on the first one, he hurried towards the printer, opened it up, took out 2 pieces of paper, and made 2 quick paper planes. That's when everything changed. He picked up one of the planes, went outside of the office, and threw it towards the end of the room. Then he told me the one he just threw was mine, and that we could throw them around in there. I ran to the other side of the room to pick my plane up, excited to play with it, and suddenly the lights went off. When I turned around to check what was happening, I saw him getting out of the lab, turning the lights off and locking the door. I ran to the door, punched it and kicked it while screaming for him to open it, panic taking over me because of how scared I was of being in the dark at the time. Through the glass on the door, I could see him scurrying away in the corridors, turning the lights off as he went and disappearing after turning a corner. I'm pretty sure that everything I felt and every shadow and creepy monster I saw in there while waiting was a part of my imagination because of how scared I was. I balled up against the corner and could see shadows moving around me in the dark. I could only cry, lost, without knowing what was happening and why he was doing that. My parents finished work eventually, and when they did, they packed up their things and made their way to the lobby to pick me up and go home. When they got there, the security guard was at the reception, but I was nowhere to be found. They panicked, of course. Must have shouted 100 different curse words at the guy, and I'm not sure how my dad didn't murder him right then and there. But when they first asked the guy where the hell I was and what he had done with me, he simply said that he had gone to do the rounds with me, and I must have gotten lost somewhere. This is a building that would take you about an hour and a half to check from top to bottom, even if you're rushing. So must have gotten lost somewhere is not exactly helpful. They looked for hours without finding me. It was only when I saw a light far at the end of the corridors leading to the lab I was in that I got the courage to stand up, rush towards the door, and start punching it as hard as I could. They finally found me there and made the guard unlock the door to get me out. I don't really remember sleeping that night, and if I did, it must have been out of exhaustion. But I know I made my mom stay in the bedroom with me the entire night. Of course, my parents made a complaint against the guard, and when they did, the guy started being investigated. He was fired and arrested, not because of locking me away where he probably hoped no one would find me, but because he had been partnering up with other criminals to steal computers and equipment from the building, to sell in some shady market, along with the information in the hard drives, and make money off it. By then, he has stolen a lot of old computers without anyone realizing, and who knows what his plans were for me that night. I'm not convinced that locking a crying child in the middle of the darkness, hidden away in some room, is exactly the most normal behavior if you're not trying to hide them and come get them later when everyone has left and sell them as part of your product. Luckily, he never had the chance to do that, and I really hope he never got to do it to any other kid. I was 22 and living on my own for the first time when this happened. It was the mid-90s. I had just gotten off work around 11 p.m. To reach my apartment building, I could either walk on the sidewalk, which was well lit with street lamps and decently trafficked, or cut across this communal garden, which was pitch black and set back from the street. I saved about 1 whole minute of walking time by cutting through the communal garden, but being young and stupid, a lot of the times I took the shortcut. That night, I got that weird feeling to not take the shortcut. I kept to the sidewalk, but there's no one else around. When I got past the garden, all of a sudden, this large man pops up from its exit path. There was no way he could have been in front of me or just behind me as I was walking. I would have noticed him. The only logical explanation was he had been hiding in the pitch black garden. My body was screaming at me to get the hell out of there. I began walking faster. My dad had taught me to always carry my keys in my fist with the key pointed out in case I needed to punch someone. But I'm 5'4" and probably weighed 110 pounds. This guy was tall and big. My only chance was to outpace him. I'm speed walking at this point, and I feel him matching my pace, getting closer. He's breathing heavily. I feel this angry energy coming off him, but my apartment building is right there. When I reach the entrance, 2 people are leaving and hold the door for me and him. I don't know why I didn't tell them I thought this guy was following me. My mind froze, and I was trying to get inside of my apartment. Plus, I was still trying to rationalize it. Maybe he was just visiting someone in the building. Maybe it was all just a coincidence. Don't be paranoid, I thought to myself. Besides, it took only a couple of seconds for them to be out the door. I had missed my chance. I'm climbing the stairs as fast as I can. It's a 3-story building, and I live on the 3rd floor. He's climbing the stairs too, still right behind me. I get to my floor, which has 4 apartments on the right side where I live, and 4 on the left. I pass by apartments 1 and 2. He's still right behind me. I stop at apartment 3 where I live, and he stops in front of apartment 4, where I know he doesn't live. He hasn't said anything, just breathing hard, and I think there's no way I'm going to open my apartment door and have him push me inside and rape me or worse. He also hasn't knocked on the door of apartment 4. It's worth noting that the apartments are U-shaped, with mine and my neighbor's door being very close together. So I bang on my own apartment door as loud as I can, but yell my neighbor's name. "Hey Kevin, let me in." This startles the guy, even more so when my own apartment door doesn't open, but Kevin's does. Kevin sees the guy standing right in front of his door and asks what he wants. The guy starts mumbling something about the wrong apartment, but I have my own door open so fast that I am inside my place in a flash, locking the door behind me. I grab my cordless phone to call the police, but I hear Kevin through the door telling this guy he needs to leave. The guy does. Kevin knocks on my door, asks if I'm okay. I thank him, say that I am, but inside I'm still frozen, adrenaline pumping, scared. I thank him again and tell him to have a good night and lock my door again. I have my phone in my hand, ready to call the police, but I start trying to rationalize it again. What exactly happened? A guy followed me home, but didn't say he had the wrong apartment. Are the cops going to care about something minor like that? I try to calm myself down, but I'm also berating myself. Why didn't I tell the people I passed when the front door opened that I thought I was being chased? Worse, why didn't I tell Kevin that the second he opened the door and saved me? He could have let me inside of his apartment and we could have called the cops together. But because of my stupidity, everything felt so ambiguous and I was questioning myself. A couple of weeks later, I'm visiting my grandparents and my grandfather is reading the paper. He tells me that a woman was raped in the apartment building across the street from mine. It's the same guy. He had multiple convictions for sexual assault and had recently been released on parole. This happened to me when I was 16 during my first job, a local ice cream store. This store was very popular in my neighborhood and was mostly employed by young women aged 16 to 26, myself included. In the summer, it could get super bustling with lines down the block and around the corner. Because of this, we were kept extremely busy and constantly rushing around scooping and talking with customers. I was kept so busy that I normally wouldn't even remember anything about the customers who came in by the time my shift was over. But this one customer, I still haven't forgotten to this day. It was another busy summer afternoon, and the shop was in full swing. I was standing near the front cash register area, and a young boy, around 8 to 10, was with his mom cashing out their ice cream. It's important to note that the layout of the shop had us facing a full wall of glass windows that made up the front of the shop when standing at the cash out area, giving a full view of the street. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed the figure hastily crossing the street towards the shop, so I turned towards the front windows to get a better look. It's a woman, and I realize she is just walking haphazardly and seemingly uncaringly through full speeding cars to get to our shop from the other side of the street. Already, I get a bad feeling from that odd behavior. She reaches our door and enters, and she is around 40 to 50 years old, I would say, wearing a visibly dirty brown shirt and jeans with long black hair. She makes a beeline for the little boy at the checkout with his mother, and unfortunately starts to try and talk to the child. The mother is clearly uncomfortable and tries to hurry and finish the purchase so they can get away. The things she is saying are mostly word salad, but all of a sudden, an unforgettable thing is uttered by her to the boy. "Little boy, have you ever been molested?" That did it. The mother rushes her son away from the woman and out of the shop, and we tell the woman to leave. She fought us a bit. I don't exactly remember how. Mainly nonsensical whines and protests. So we called the owner to get down here and help us handle the situation, as we thought maybe she didn't respect us because we were younger women, and that she would listen to an older man instead. Luckily, he lived close and came quickly, and we were right. He was able to shoo her out. She then left the same way she came, speed walking through traffic with cars beeping at her along the way. We sighed and talked about how weird that was, but chalked it up to a one-off encounter. Later though, she tried to enter the store again. This time, our boss decided to call the cops. The cops came, and we watched from the front window as she sat in front of the store getting it talking to from two police and our boss, and she eventually walked away. I don't think there was much the cops could do at that point, besides tell her to leave. I don't think she had done an arrestable offense yet. After she left that time, we really thought it must be the end, but we had only reached the halfway point. That night, once it was dark and we were closing up, she reappeared. At this point, our boss was back home, and it was just us. Luckily, we had locked all the doors. We again watched through the front windows as she pressed her face against the glass to stare at us. We nervously chuckled to each other and joked a bit about it, feeling safe behind the locked doors. That was until she started talking. She started saying things like, "I'm gonna kill you bitches," and kept repeating it louder. She started pacing back and forth while staring into the shop, doing the slit throat gesture with her thumb against her neck. Now it was not so funny. We were starting to get scared again, and one of my co-workers texted our boss to come back. He responded. He was on his way back and had called the cops again. Unfortunately, before he could get there again, she started banging on the glass, hard. This really made it feel like she was truly willing to get physical with us if that glass hadn't been between her and us, and she looked enraged. We tried to avoid eye contact as much as possible, but it was hard not to flinch every time she threatened and banged. She would shout at us and tell us to look at her, while saying she was going to kill us as she banged and paced. Suddenly, our boss came speed walking into view. The woman clocked him and turned and ran. Clearly she was intimidated by him. He didn't stop and kept speed walking after her, out of the frame of the front windows for us to see. Eventually, two cops escorted her back to the front of the shop, my boss following behind. They sat her down, talked to her again, but this time promptly arrested her and took her away in their car. Finally, we all breathed a sigh of relief and unlocked the door for our boss to come in. But it doesn't end there. Fast forward 5 months. It's December now, Christmas Eve. I'm sitting in my family dining room, and we're all enjoying the holiday meal when we get a knock at the door. All our guests have long arrived, and we weren't expecting anyone. My mom answered it, and lo and behold, it was the same unmistakable woman from 5 months ago who tormented my old ice cream job. Now, I mentioned that the ice cream shop was local, and that was indeed the case. I lived only about a 20-minute walk from it, so I'm wondering if this woman had been hanging out around this area for the last 5 months. I say hanging because I have a feeling she was probably homeless, and I haven't seen her since this Christmas incident, nor did I see her before that summer. She asked my mom if she could borrow a phone charger. My mom, being a charitable person and also in the Christmas spirit, asks what phone she has. But the woman just says, "I need a charger. Can I come in?" My mom is charitable, but she was not allowed to let a stranger in our home. She said no, and the woman started to get pushy. "Please let me in. Let me in. I need a charger," she said, and started to push past my mom to get into our home. My mom realized this woman wasn't of sound mind and was not listening to her, and called on an uncle of mine to help. And like before with our boss, once the man arrived, she shrunk away. My uncle told her firmly she needed to leave, and she mumbled something and slunk off. Anyway, I know this woman was probably someone who was really in need of help, but she scared the hell out of us and that kid. And the fact that she found 2 places I resided regularly was extremely surreal to me. I really hope she got the help she needed.